These are antiques. These are mantiques. Antique, mantique. These guys sell mantiques. This is their store.
We're bringing stuff every day, in and out, in and out, in and out. We're shaking and baking.
These are their customers.
Give me the rundown on the GMC.
This lived in a bar in Ghent in Belgium.
Follow Jim and Jeff from 9 to 5 or after hours as they buy, sell, and restore the coolest stuff for the coolest collectors worldwide.
No academic background. I worked since I was a child, paper routes and bellhop and all that kind of stuff. David and I actually have a lot in common. He was a bellhop at the age of 14 and I was a bellhop at the age of 13 in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm making money and you get used to having a little jingle in your pocket and it's a nice feeling. So I never looked back. I had my own business when I was a teenager. I was renting surfboards and rafts in St. Augustine. And I had the neighbors working for me. I had a guy's mom managing the place, and her husband was patching surfboards for me. But anyway, then Uncle Sam called me and decided they needed me, so I went in the submarines for a while. Spent most of my time in Hawaii, which wasn't too bad. Surfing every day almost. But I've been fortunate. But I think luck is something that's coming there, and people take advantage of it and jump on the wagon, and other people don't. David Rock-Ola founded the company originally in 1927. He had a cigar store in Canada and somebody came and put a gumball machine in there and he got hooked on coin-operated equipment. So when he got a little older and moved down to Chicago and went to work for a slot machine, I think he went to work for a slot machine company and then eventually started manufacturing trade stimulators, and he was a street operator. He operated in every state west of the Mississippi pretty much. And he had partners in those businesses. One of them was called the Blue Seal Company. And I think it went out of business. It didn't do so well. But he was gotten into this, making these trade stimulators and doing stuff. And he opened, I think his first plant on Jackson Street was called the Scale Company, Rock-Ola Scale Company. And then he changed it to Rock-Ola Manufacturing Corporation. I mean, he made everything that you can possibly think of. Scales, pinball machines, and on and on. Oh, and he made that racing machine too with the horses going around.
Yes.
I think I got 2.5 or 3.5 of those. I don't know if one of them has a gum vendor at the bottom. Sweepstakes.
Yeah.
Well, the
official
gumball, right?
sweepstakes,
Well,
yeah.
some had gumball vendors in them and some of them didn't.
Correct. That's right.
And nice, desirable piece. It works really nice. And then he got very interested in jukeboxes. He was the biggest pinball manufacturer in the world. And you've seen all the mechanical pens. I know you guys have.
Yes.
And he was making 3 and 4 models at a time and changing it 2 and 3 times a year. It was so big that his factory of 550-some thousand feet wasn't big enough. He rented more space, and he was hiring mostly women, I think, and they were driving the pins into the boards, with pinball, and it was huge. And what happened was he and David Gottlieb were good partners, and Gottlieb was also interested in getting into jukeboxes, and here David was the biggest. And I think they made a deal, and David Gottlieb never got into the jukebox business, and Rock-Ola got out of the pinball business and turned it all over to him. And that was in late 34. He made the first box. It's actually officially called a 35. There's one downstairs in the wooden one in the showroom, the first model, Model A. Then you know the rest of the story. He just made jukeboxes actually longer than anybody else in the business. Wurlitzer was around for 40 years only. They went out in the 70s. Seaberg went out in the 80s. And Rock-Ola is still here today since, 1927 is when he started the company. He's really known in history. He's known for his jukeboxes. And also, I don't think a lot of people realize that the term rock and roll came from his name playing music. And of course, we know the term juke is a slang for people working in the fields.
So rock and roll comes from Rock-Ola?
Oh, look at the name, ROC. It was probably slang. The box is rocking, or go put a nickel in the rock. I don't think you could have gotten that from the other two famous names in jukeboxes. But when he put the dash in there, and it's OLA after that, it's almost like rock and rolla. I think the first version of music was called rockabilly.
Yeah.
And later on it was in rock. I bought the company from his son, Donald Rock-Ola. We closed in September of '92, and David died 4 months later in January, right after his 96th birthday. He was actually born in 1896. Just short story, when I found out Rock-Ola was for sale, it was at a show, big coin-operated show, and I can't remember if it was Nashville or where I was. And I was just dead sick with the flu. I didn't go to the show, and the last day I said, I gotta go to the show. So I went and I walked around, and I got around to Frank Schultz over there at the Rock-Ola booth, and he goes, Glenn, pulls me aside and says, they're gonna sell the company. What? What? Went back to my room and dictated a letter for them to send off to Donald Rock-Ola. And that's how that all started. Just happened to be young and crazy.
Right. What turned you to say, I want to invest in all this cabinetry?
Well, antique apparatus, actually, I started out as a selling antique radios. Marconi's, DeFars, really, I mean, real early stuff, battery operated equipment. Okay. There's some pieces here in the office.
So you were in the antique radio business to start with?
Radio business. And the name antique apparatus came from a company in Connecticut, I think it was called the Wireless Apparatus Company.
Okay.
And it took me a long time to get it registered with the federal government because it was two generic names that once I could prove I'd been doing it for X number of years, they finally granted it. Yeah, in the early days of antique apparatus, I was using the Row system.
Mm-hmm. I remember those.
And yeah, and I went to them, and I think in the 80s, and they were happy to have some business, and I ordered, I took a box back to Grand Rapids that I'd completely redone. I bought the original one from Peter Betson, Pacific, and took all the guts out and extended some cables and shortened some cables and built the push buttons into it and built the whole thing and drove it back there in the middle of a winter storm. And they kind of weren't so interested, and I said, well, you guys want to see the machine? I brought one. Okay. So they all put on their coats and their overcoats and all went downstairs. It was snowing. A little Plymouth van. We slid the door open, opened the back door up, and they pulled the covers off, and they just went bonkers. They just went nuts.
There it was, huh?
That's our system in there, so let's get it upstairs. So I left there with with an agreement with them that they wouldn't sell to anybody else doing nostalgic jukeboxes. I had their warranty, and I got a really good price, really good deal. And I ordered, I think at that time I ordered 20 sets.
20 sets.
Ordered 20 systems.
20.
First year I made 22 boxes. Next year I made 220. I remember this because they're simple numbers. And the third year I made 660. And I was never able to keep up with the demand. Sharper Image put me in their catalog
I remember that.
right after I'd gotten started, about a year later. And they put it on the front cover and the two inside pages. I mean, it was a 3-page spread on the jukebox.
Nice.
And they're selling for twice as much money as I'm selling it to them for. And they have ladies just taking orders on their headsets and getting their credit cards. And they were just making a fortune. But I'm delivering the Christmas orders in February and March. They're screaming at me. But never had to look back since then. And everybody got paid back. The guy that actually turned me on to jukeboxes, my buddy lives in Carmel, way back when, he says there's some jukeboxes for sale in Denver, and I'm going, jukeboxes? Yeah, okay. And Charlie C. of C's Candies, and Peter and myself drove two 20-foot trucks back across the Rocky Mountains with 42 jukeboxes in them from, I think the guy's name was Garcia in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how we got started.
And then what was the point you said, I want to try to make an antique apparatus, make a jukebox cabinet?
It was kind of evolution. You know, you're selling, you're making all the parts for the nostalgic jukeboxes, because I was restoring jukeboxes, like the one on Cheers. That was mine. It was on there. It's now in the Smithsonian with a bunch of TV archives. And I made the metal, the chrome-plated metal parts. I had the grill cloth woven. I found a mill to do that. So we're making all the parts, and I thought, well, I'll make a cabinet, because maybe somebody will want to buy a cabinet. And I actually took an empty cabinet to a show, and it didn't go anywhere. And then I put the row system in it and took it to the next show. And I had guys I knew that were jukebox guys, and they'd walk up with their wife or their buddies and go, wow, look at that. Somebody put a new mechanism in that old jukebox. They couldn't tell the difference between what we had made from the original. But our business is good. I sold the commercial side that's in the bars, that's digital. But we still do a ton of business with CD jukeboxes and the digital mechanisms put in our cabinets for diners. All the Black Bear restaurants have got our stuff in it. But you can play ours with a phone too, our home version of a digital jukebox. You can play with any kind of iPad or whatever.
So Glenn, where are you at today with your business here?
Well, we've got 50,000 square feet here. We're not as big as we were before the Great Recession, when I had about 90, 96, 97 people. We have 20-some people, but we only make the nostalgic boxes, and it's standard models. But I did have the building next door, so we had 70,000 square feet at one time. Not nearly as big as the original 550,000 that David had back in Chicago. It's a piece of American history, and it's an American invention. But like I said, not bad for a hobby.
Yeah,
so.
not at all. Not at all. Hi everyone, it's Jeff from the Mantiques Network. Thanks for watching our videos. If you like this, I'd encourage you to go to our website, the Mantiques Network, to check out over 20 reality videos and 700 product channels. And if you'd like us to come to your place and film your collection to premiere on our network, please give me a call.